Hey everybody, it's Ron, and today I'm going to be talking about Heretics of Dune. This is the 5th book in Frank Herbert's original Dune series. This one took me the longest to finish, partly because God Emperor of Dune was a pretty exhausting experience. Not in a bad way, but it was a really heavy book, and after Leto II died, there were no more characters from the original trilogy to latch onto anymore. So to be honest, I wasn't ready to jump into this one right away, because aside from Duncan Idaho, it has a completely new cast of characters, and there's another enormous time jump. So after a slow start for me, I began to understand the significance of having this jump in time, and I actually grew to like a lot of these new characters as I got further into the book. What I like most about this book is that it significantly expands the lore of the Dune universe, and I don't know if Dune fans at the time wrote to Frank Herbert and had similar thoughts to mine, but it almost feels like they said that they'd like to read more about other aspects of this universe and the other planets involved, and he definitely improves on that in this, which I really appreciated. Herbert gives us so much more information on the Bene Gesserit sisterhood and the Tleilaxu, as well as the improvements in technology like the no ships and no globes, which makes sense now after reading the first Dune prequel called House Atreides. In that book, the Harkonnens use an early version of this no-ship technology to frame Duke Leto, and even have their own no-room, or no-globe as it's called. So that kind of messes up one of my criticisms of that book, because I hadn't read Heretics at the time, and didn't know that Frank Herbert had come up with the idea of no ships already. Most of the planets in this book have different names, and it can be confusing at first, but it seems realistic to me that after thousands of years, planets like Giedi Prime and Arrakis would change, and it helps to get a sense of the drastic change in time from the previous books. So Giedi Prime is now Gamu, and that's where the book starts out in a Bene Gesserit keep, where we're introduced to another Duncan Idaho Gola, but in this book, he's still very young. Another thing that separates this book from the others is that it focuses a little bit more on the characters and gives us a lot more backstory to them. This book even has flashbacks with characters like Odrade and Miles Tegg, and that was also very refreshing because I don't think any of the other books had any significant flashbacks for the characters, but I could be wrong. To be honest, I had a little bit of trouble getting started with this book because I would get really confused with the different Bene Gesserit characters. Within the first few sections of this book, we're introduced to Shuang Yu, Lucilla, Taraza, and Odrade, who are all Bene Gesserit sisters, and I was having a tough time differentiating them. It does become a little easier to separate them as the story unfolds, and they all have specific roles to play. Out of all of them, I gravitated towards Odrade the most, because this is the first instance, besides Jessica, of a Bene Gesserit sister being portrayed with more humanistic qualities, and her tragic backstory helps this. She talks about how the idea of love is taught to be harmful to the sisterhood, and it's frowned upon and seen as a weakness. This not only fleshes out the mysteries of the Bene Gesserit more, but it also explains why this universe is so cold. I love Dune, but the last thing I think of it as is fun or funny. Sure, it's fun to read about all these different factions scheming against each other, but the one thing I was frustrated with early on was that most of the characters were cruel and lacked humanity, and you could see it peeking through in characters like Odrade, which was a nice touch in this. The sisterhood takes center stage in this book, and that seems inevitable, with the God Emperor out of the picture. At the end of that novel, the death of Leto II spawns a great scattering, where people from all over the universe voyage out into the unknown, and in this book, they return, and that return brings one of the main foils for the Bene Gesserit, called the Honored Matres. I wasn't exactly sure what their abilities were compared to the Bene Gesserit, other than that they have skilled levels of seduction. One of the problems I had with this book is that the Honored Matres didn't feel like much of a threat early on, because the main Tleilaxu character, Waf, kills them on a no-ship pretty easily, and even the Bene Gesserit characters say that one of them could take out all of the honored Matres. I don't know if that was meant to show the Sisterhood's ego or if it was actually true, so maybe I'm missing something there on my first read. Speaking of the Tleilaxu, I was really happy to read more about them, and I really enjoyed the character, Waf. I liked how Herbert shows why the Tleilaxu were formidable, and also shows their weaknesses as well. I was really interested in the truth about their axolotl tanks, and I also enjoyed the section on their home planet where Waf was basically saying that they have held back on purpose all of these years, and let other factions and planets call them the Dirty Tleilaxu when they were a lot more threatening than people thought. I also liked that there was a Gola version of Sidetail, who was one of my favorite characters in Dune Messiah, so that was a nice little Easter egg. There are a lot of religious themes in all of the Dune books, and this is no exception. I found it fascinating how the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood can manipulate people with their Missionara Protectiva, who push false religions to people like the Tleilaxu, who are eventually found to be Zen Sunni and Sufi. This works to the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood's advantage. Arrakis is now called Arrakis, and it's run by priests who discover a child named Shiana who can control the sandworms, who are now referred to as Shaitain instead of Shai-Hulud, again showing the passage of time. Leto too predicted that a child would come along who possessed this power, and he was right. I was also a little unclear exactly how she was able to do this, and I might have missed it on my first read, but I would assume that it has to do with Leto's essence still being in the sandworms, and Shiana being a descendant of Siona and the rest of the Atreides line. Taraza adds an interesting element to this story because her character is tasked with imprinting the Duncan Idaho Gola, and some of the things she would have to do to achieve this are, let's just say, uncomfortable. This really shows how immoral the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood are and how far they will go to spread their influence. Besides O'Drade, Miles Tegg was another one of my favorite characters in this book, and flashbacks in the form of him replaying his memories in a mentat way help flesh out his character even more. He worked with the Sisterhood as a mentat military commander for many years, and is called out of retirement to watch over the Duncan Gola. Aside from the first book, this is my favorite portrayal of Duncan, and I loved how towards the end, every version of him is awakened. Tegg also goes through a major transformation towards the end when his abilities are awakened, and he has powers that reminded me of Leto 2 in Children of Dune, when he was racing through the desert with superhuman speed and had superhuman strength. Tegg has a new level of prescience as well, and it was interesting to see how far the human body and mind could be developed after years of conditioning. Like I said, I was a little hesitant going into this one because I thought a lot of the elements in the previous books wouldn't be here, but not only did the lore get expanded in a great way, but a lot of the characters that are long gone during this period play a pivotal role in the story, and the repercussions of their actions are still felt after thousands of years. This comes to a head when O'Drade finds the God Emperor's stash of melange hidden in Sietch Tabor, which was a great callback to the other books and really made me feel like all of these books were more connected than I thought, even though it spans many, many years. I also think it was a pretty bold move to have the Honored Matres actually destroy the planet Arrakis, with still one book left to go when the series is called Dune, and that is the main planet of the saga. But it seems like the Bene Gesserit sisters are looking to recreate it on their planet, Chapter House, since they captured a worm. I'm definitely interested in that and have no idea if they will be successful because people have tried to get worms off planet before. Despite the overwhelming amount of characters and a slow start, I was surprised with how much I enjoyed this book and how quickly the new characters won me over once I got into the meat of the story. Hopefully it won't take me long to finish Chapter House, but I am a pretty slow reader, so I apologize. But I will finish this series and have a review for that one as well. So thank you for being patient, and please like and subscribe if you like this type of content because it definitely helps out this channel. Thanks for watching.